Are we currently building a paradise, or are we unknowingly digging our own graves?
That's a pretty heavy way to start.
It is a heavy question, I know.
Yeah.
But think about it for a second. We're living in this era where we look at the possibility of stopping death itself.
Right.
Not as some divine miracle, but simply as a technical problem.
Right.
Something to be solved by engineers in a lab. So today, we're going to explore the incredibly uncomfortable logic of human progress. The mission of this deep dive is to look at a truly fascinating premise from a document we are unpacking today, titled From Homo Sapiens to Homo Deus.
Yeah, and it is a fascinating text.
It really is.
Yeah.
We want to figure out if the end game of all our innovation is actually to grant ourselves godlike powers. And I guess more importantly, if we do get those powers, will we control our technology, or is it just inevitable that it will control us?
It really is the ultimate question of our time. But to truly grasp where we are going and to understand the warnings we're going to dive into today, we first have to look honestly at where we came from. We have to strip away our ego and understand what actually makes us powerful as a species in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the material starts with a massive physical reality check that I honestly found hilarious, but also deeply humbling.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, if you look at human history as this relentless pursuit of dominance, you quickly realize our power is absolutely not physical. Physically speaking, humans are pathetic.
We are. We really are.
Right. In a straight physical contest against nature, we lose every time. I mean, a gorilla has raw strength that is exponentially more imposing than ours.
Yeah.
A cheetah would leave the absolute fastest human on Earth in the dust without breaking a sweat. We don't have the claws, we lack the speed, we don't have the raw muscle to dominate the animal kingdom by force. So if we are this physically weak, how are we the ones running the planet?
It's a great question, and the answer isolates the exact moment our trajectory as a species fundamentally changed. It wasn't the discovery of fire, it wasn't the invention of the wheel. The real shift happened the moment humans started to think, to imagine, and most importantly, to envision a future that didn't yet exist in the physical world.
So our minds.
Exactly. That was the single cognitive shift that changed the entire game. Our dominance over the planet wasn't built on muscle. It was built on our unique capacity for collective imagination. We are the only species capable of believing in things that do not physically exist.
Right.
The source material calls these shared fictions.
And I love how this abstract idea gets grounded in our everyday reality in the text. Because when you stop and think about the pillars of your modern life right now, things like money, national borders, laws, constitutions, none of these things are real in a strict biological sense.
No, they aren't.
You can't walk into the woods and trip over a law.
Yeah.
You can't sit down and eat a national border for lunch.
That would be a tough meal.
Right? They do not exist in nature. And yet, because you and I and billions of other people collectively agreed to believe in these shared fictions, they become the most powerful forces on Earth.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this shared imagination is precisely what allowed humans to organize on a massive scale.
How so?
Well, think about it. You can't get 1 million chimpanzees to cooperate by promising them bananas in the afterlife.
Well, yeah, no, you definitely cannot.
But humans! We can organize from small, scattered tribes into massive nations through the power of a shared story. It is the invisible glue that turned tiny clusters of huts into vast, sprawling empires.
That makes total sense.
But for a long time, we needed a way to reinforce that dominance. We needed a way to justify our place at the top of the pyramid. And historically, we did that through religion.
Right.
Religion gave us a clean, simple narrative that we were the center of the universe. The story was that the trees, the animals, the stars, they were all created specifically for the service of mankind. That provided the moral justification to rule over everything else.
Right. And in those earlier chapters of human history, we desperately needed that ancient lens of religion to make sense of a really terrifying, chaotic world.
We did. The world was entirely unpredictable.
Exactly. When the Nile flooded in ancient Egypt and wiped out entire settlements, people didn't have meteorology to explain it. They believed their god, Happy, was expressing his anger.
Right.
When lightning split the sky, the ancient Greeks were absolutely convinced that Zeus was in a divine rage. Every mystery in your life, every disaster was a divine message.
But then our understanding of the world evolved. Science began to progress.
Slowly but surely.
Yes, we discovered tectonic plates. We mapped out atmospheric chemistry. We decoded the laws of physics. And as scientific explanations systematically filled the gaps in our knowledge, one by one, We slowly moved God out of the driver's seat.
We didn't need the myths anymore.
Exactly. We no longer needed Zeus to explain lightning. We replaced divine intervention with human reason. And this monumental shift birthed a brand new ideology: humanism.
Humanism, which, if you follow the logic of our source material, actually functions exactly like the religions it replaced. It still keeps humans at the absolute center of the universe.
It does, it just changes the ultimate authority. Humanism insists that human experience is the ultimate and final priority.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
The core rule of humanism is based entirely on our internal feelings. If something makes a human happy or reduces human suffering, it is fundamentally good. If it causes human pain, it is fundamentally bad. Every moral decision in our modern society, from our laws to our human rights declarations, is now weighed entirely on that scale.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because that shift in thinking completely changed how we viewed humanity's three oldest, greatest enemies.
The big three.
The big three: hunger, disease, and war. For thousands of years, these three forces just held us hostage. If the rains didn't come, millions starved to death, and people just accepted it as a tragic necessity.
Yeah, what could you do?
Right. If a plague arrived, whole cities emptied out, and you could do nothing but pray. War was just seen as a natural, inevitable state of affairs. They were viewed as the unavoidable will of God. But the scientific revolution completely shattered that narrative.
It reframed them entirely. It turned them from divine punishments into practical, earthly problems.
Yeah.
We realized that famine isn't a curse from the heavens. It's almost always the result of terrible economic policies or political failures.
Right. Logistical problems.
Exactly. And when we discovered germs, we finally understood that diseases aren't punishments for our sins. They are simply biological invaders, and they can be fought with hygiene, antibiotics, and vaccines.
Which is just a massive paradigm shift.
Huge. We took these massive existential terrors that had plagued us since the dawn of time and reduced them to technical problems to be solved by human ingenuity.
And we basically solved them. I mean, there is a mind-blowing contrast here in the text that perfectly highlights this modern miracle. Today, in the world you live in right now, more people die from obesity-related conditions like diabetes than from starvation or war combined.
It is staggering when you put it like that.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
More people die from eating too much than from having too little.
Yeah.
While we obviously still fear disease, the era of the unstoppable civilization-ending plague is largely in the history books. Basic survival for the vast majority of the globe is essentially solved.
But wait, if we have conquered famine and we have pushed back disease, what happens next?
Right. What's the next goal?
Because human beings aren't exactly known for just sitting still and being satisfied with what they have. When you solve survival, you start looking for the next mountain to climb. And the argument here is that the next mountain is divinity.
The leap from Homo sapiens, the thinking man, to Homo Deus, the godlike human. We aren't satisfied with just not dying of the plague anymore. We want to be better, faster, stronger. We want to live forever.
We do.
We are quite literally starting to treat death itself as a patchable technical glitch in our biological system.
And we are already well on our way. Just look at the data from the last century. Medicine has essentially doubled our life expectancy. Historically, average life expectancy hovered around 25 or 30 years. Now, in many parts of the world, we expect to live well past 80. We are actively upgrading our biology.
We are upgrading our biology exactly like we update the operating systems on our smartphones.
Yes.
It's wild. We use genetic testing to predict diseases before a child is even born, effectively editing the future of our species. We are developing artificial organs and robotic limbs that you can control entirely by thought. We are moving away from being random biological accidents shaped by natural selection, and we are becoming intelligently engineered entities. It genuinely feels like we are touching the stars.
We are, but, and this is a big bet, but this unprecedented power has a dark and deeply uncomfortable side, a side we rarely discuss openly.
Okay, let's get into it.
This incredible leap forward has been built on a foundation of horrific suffering for other living beings. The material refers to our industrial farming systems as a factory of misery.
Now, I gotta play devil's advocate here for a second. We are talking about human progress, conquering death, and touching the stars. Why focus on agricultural farming? How does that connect to our future?
It connects because it shows exactly what happens when a superior, highly intelligent entity views another living being as nothing more than a biological machine.
Oh, wow.
To feed billions of humans, most animals on this planet no longer live in nature. They are born, live, and die inside massive industrial complexes. We have chickens that never see a single ray of sunlight. We treat cows not as living, feeling creatures, but as input-output algorithms built solely for milk production.
That's grim.
It is. And if we are willing to treat lesser biological beings this way simply for our own convenience and growth, we have to ask ourselves a very tough question. How might a superintelligent AI eventually treat us?
Whoa. Okay, that is profoundly unsettling. So how do we currently justify treating animals like biological machines? How do we sleep at night?
We rely on the myth of the soul. We tell ourselves that we are inherently special, that we have a soul or some elevated level of consciousness that entirely separates us from those animals.
Right, that we're somehow above them.
Yes. But objectively speaking, science hasn't actually found a soul in a laboratory. Furthermore, science can't even fully explain what consciousness is or where it comes from. The suggestion here is that we simply use our perceived superiority as a convenient shield. It allows us to ignore the reality of the immense suffering we cause to fuel our progress.
Which leads right into a terrifying limitation of science itself. Science is completely neutral.
Completely.
It explains the how, but it is entirely silent on the why. Science can tell you exactly how to split the atom to build a nuclear reactor to power a city, or how to build a nuclear bomb to instantly vaporize one. But the scientific method cannot tell you which one of those things you should do.
Exactly. Science has no moral compass. And because science can't provide that compass, we still rely on belief systems to guide us, whether that's traditional religion or secular ideologies like capitalism or socialism. And right now, our dominant global economy is an ideology built entirely on the requirement of endless, infinite growth.
The treadmill of growth.
Yes, the treadmill. If our economies stop growing for even a moment, the whole structure risks collapse. So we are trapped on this accelerating treadmill. We are endlessly chasing technological upgrades, greater efficiency, and more power, but we never actually pause to ask where this path ends.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because this is where the deep dive takes a sharp turn inwards, looking at what this relentless technological journey is doing to our sense of self. And it starts by shattering a concept central to your very identity, your free will.
This is where it gets really personal.
It does. We pride ourselves on free will. Our entire political system, our legal system, democracy itself is built on the foundational idea that the voter knows best, that your choices are uniquely your own.
But modern neuroscience is beginning to suggest that free will might be nothing more than a very convincing illusion. Let's walk through a basic example from the text.
Okay.
Imagine you are choosing between option A and option B. In the moment, you feel like you are carefully weighing the options, deliberating, and arriving at a conscious, independent decision.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. I have free will. I chose to drink coffee this morning instead of tea. I opened the cabinet, I looked at both, and I made a choice. Are you telling me that wasn't a choice? Yeah. That it was just some chemical math equation?
Well, think about it like a YouTube recommendation algorithm. How does YouTube decide what video to show you next?
By looking at what I've clicked on before.
Right. It takes millions of past inputs, what you've watched, what people with similar demographics click on, the time of day, and it outputs a highly predictable result. Your brain does the exact same thing. Yes. Your brain's chemical processes, your deep biological conditioning, your genetics, and your accumulated past experiences have already tilted the scales long before your conscious mind gets involved. By the time you feel yourself deciding to drink the coffee, your brain has already locked that choice in.
That is?
We are essentially biological algorithms. We act first based on our biological programming, and then our conscious minds invent a logical-sounding PR statement to explain to ourselves why we did what we did.
So my brain makes a move and then invents a story after the fact, so I feel like I'm in control.
That's the theory, yes.
That is terrifying. And if we follow this logic, if we're just biological algorithms, what are we doing right now with our society? We're eagerly handing our decision-making power over to external artificial algorithms.
We are doing it constantly.
Because if decision-making is just math, silicon algorithms can do math infinitely better than our wet, messy brains.
Precisely. Artificial intelligence doesn't get tired, it doesn't get emotional, and it can process millions of data points in a fraction of a second. We are already starting to trust artificial intelligence more than our own intuition.
But surely there are things algorithms can't do, right? Like, I understand an AI doing math, but what about complex medical diagnoses or creating art?
You'd think so, but AI is already outperforming human experts in complex, high-stakes fields.
Like what?
In finance, algorithms execute trades faster and smarter than any human broker. In medicine, AI is already outperforming doctors in detecting certain types of cancers from X-rays because it can spot microscopic patterns the human eye misses. And yes, even in art, AI is composing music and painting pictures that audiences simply cannot distinguish from human creations.
And it isn't just in these high-level fields. It's heavily embedded in our daily lives. AI tells you which route to take to work to avoid traffic. It curates the music you listen to. It even tells you who you should be dating by matching your profiles. For anyone outside our parents' generation, AI has quietly become an invisible partner in virtually every decision you make.
And nowhere is this invisible partnership more powerful and more apparent than in social media. The social media algorithms now know us better than our own family members do.
Easily.
Think about that. They have mapped your scrolling patterns, your hidden fears, and your desires with such accuracy that they can predict your behavior with frightening precision.
It's like when you just think about buying a new pair of shoes, or you have a brief conversation about a vacation, and suddenly ads for those exact things are dominating your feed.
It feels like magic, but it's just data.
They know what you will buy before you even feel the conscious urge to buy it. They know how you will vote before you've even looked at the candidates' platforms. The chilling conclusion here is that humans are being quietly demoted. You are no longer the primary decision maker in your own life. We're all slowly becoming sources of mere data points, feeding the vast machine networks that increasingly run the world around us.
Which brings us to the fork in the road. As we look ahead, there are two very distinct futures that are approaching rapidly. The first path is a total merger with our technology. This is the path of the cyborg elite.
Right. This is the future where we use neural links to connect our brains directly to the internet. We gain the ability to upgrade our eyes to see new spectrums of light, expand our memory with cloud storage, and boost our cognitive speed to compete with AI. But wait, technology like that isn't going to be cheap? Who actually gets access to these upgrades?
That is the massive, crucial caveat. This superhuman status will almost certainly not be for everyone. It will be a luxury reserved for the ultra-elite who can afford it.
So a massive divide.
An unprecedented biological divide in human history. You will have a wealthy few who essentially engineer themselves into gods, and the rest of humanity will be left behind in their old, unmodified biological forms. We wouldn't just have economic inequality anymore, we would have a true biological caste system. Imagine competing for a job against someone who has a search engine hardwired into their visual cortex.
You couldn't. You'd be irrelevant.
Yeah.
That sounds incredibly dystopian.
Yeah.
But if that isn't wild enough, what is the second path? Dataism. Explain dataism to me like I'm 5.
In the worldview of dataism, the individual human being, your feelings, your dreams, your consciousness, has absolutely no inherent value.
None.
None. The only thing that matters, the only thing of actual worth in the universe is the flow of information. If you process data efficiently and contribute to the network, you exist and you have value. If you don't contribute data, you are entirely irrelevant. In dataism, a beautiful sunset has no value unless you take a photo of it, upload it, and it generates engagement. The biological experience itself is worthless. The data flow is everything.
And this raises the ultimate, looming question. What happens when algorithms become so advanced that they start designing even better, faster versions of themselves? What is the role of a biological human being in a world where a machine network can think, create, and decide exponentially better than any biological brain ever could?
It's a profound existential threat.
If we don't process data well, do we just become obsolete? The material doesn't offer us a comforting answer. It just holds up a mirror to show us that as we become more technologically powerful, we are also becoming more profoundly confused about our own worth.
If we synthesize the central thesis of everything we've discussed today, it comes down to this. Throughout our entire history, humanity has always looked for a god to follow. Sometimes it was a deity in the clouds like Zeus. Sometimes it was the spirit of a nation or a grand political ideology.
But
Today, our new god is the algorithm. We are bowing down to the digital systems we ourselves built, and we are willingly letting them dictate the course of our lives because they are highly efficient.
And the real danger we face isn't some dramatic sci-fi movie scenario. It is not a fleet of Terminator robots rising up to violently destroy humanity in a fiery war. The real danger is much more subtle and honestly, much more likely. The danger is that we prioritize our own comfort, our own entertainment, and our own efficiency so much that we simply stop thinking.
Exactly. We keep handing our choices over to AI because it is easy and convenient. We stop exercising our own judgment, we stop wrestling with difficult moral questions, and we just let the data decide for us. And if that happens, we won't elevate ourselves to become gods. We will become slaves to a system we no longer understand, trapped in a world where the machines we created are the only things left with the power to decide anything at all.
We are standing at a threshold that will either elevate humanity to the stars or quietly turn us into biological relics. The choice, if we even still have the free will to make one, is whether we will remain the masters of our tools or inevitably become the tools of our own inventions.
It is a deeply sobering reflection on everything we have built so far.
It really is. And before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought experiment to mull over as you go about your day, based purely on the logic of everything we just unpacked. If human free will is just a convincing illusion, a convenient story your biological algorithms invent after the fact, and if AI algorithms are already predicting and making your choices for you before you even act, at what exact point in your daily routine do you stop being the main character of your own life and quietly become just a biological node transferring data between two machines?